Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a little bit of a recap on our successful tournament down on Lake Okeechobee. I'm going to go over the baits and the rods and just what we were keying in on. This is an event where the 2 days of practice I think really did have an effect on the outcome. I think there were a lot of guys that went down there thinking they'd be able to find some areas that held fish, and Okeechobee is not the same fishery it used to be. There's a lot of dead water out there, and I was fortunate enough to get down before it went off limits and just drive around the lake and see some areas that had the right elements in it. And because of that, when I went back for my 2 days of official practice, I was able to go right to areas that I felt like would hold fish. And pretty much all the areas that had fish in pre-practice also had fish in the tournament. And the one area that I ended up keying in on the entire event had a really good population of fish. And I knew going into the event that the area had the potential to win the tournament as long as the amount of boat traffic and pressure was not high. And unfortunately, in the tournament, there were probably, I'm going to say roughly 15 boats that fished the area. And the area really was a pretty small, a small location. I'm going to say, it was probably like 6 acres, maybe a little bit bigger than that, which, that sounds like a relatively decent amount of water, but for 15 boats over the course of, multiple days, it's not. And to mix in the fact that there really weren't fish throughout that. The fish were keying in almost entirely on the cattails, whether they were an isolated cattail or a clump of cattails, that seemed like that's where the fish were. And there was not cattails throughout that entire area. It was very much, a few small locations of cattails with some isolated ones scattered around. So there was a lot of dead water within our area. But if you keyed in on the cattails, you did well. Out of the 15 people, I'd say there were probably 8, roughly half that qualified for the top 50, and then of that there was 3 that were in the top 10. Miles Berghoff, Bill McDonald, and Anthony Gagliardi were all in there. And it showed that the potential, the area had the potential to win the event. I think the fish were getting spread around amongst so many anglers that it would have been really difficult for one of those anglers to win. But the area was a very good area. So for me, these were my setups, my main baits. This is a dirty jigs. It's a jig. It's a dirty jig Scott Canterbury flipping jig, and on that I paired it up with just a Berkley Max Scent Creature Hog, and I was throwing the Okeechobee 420 color. I had that on a MHX FP 936 flipping rod. And then I had a high-speed Abu Garcia Revo ALF reel on it. Left hand. I'm very much a left-handed pitcher. I like to make sure that I can maximize the amount of pitches that I have. So this was my main bait when I was fishing the isolated cattails. If I was out in more open water areas, I really liked throwing the jig. I caught a bunch of fish on it. When you're fishing cattails and heavy cover in general with a Texas rig, you can get pretty annoyed pretty quickly with having to correct your worm or your bait, all the time, because it gets knocked down and pulled down, and it's continuously just getting beaten up to the point where you need to put a fresh bait on. And with the jig, I just felt like I could be a lot more efficient. And when I was getting, when you get bit, it seemed like they were a little bit better quality as well. So if I wasn't throwing the jig, I was throwing one of 2 baits. This is, again, the Berkley Max Scent Creature Hog. This is a black one. I was throwing it in any dark color. So black, black and blue, or South African Special, which was one of my favorites out there. So that was one bait. And then the other bait, you know, was just the Berkley Pit Boss, and I was throwing that again in Junebug in black and blue colors. And really the only difference between these two were the weight size. This is a 2-ounce weight that I have on this one, and this is the MHX FP 937, so it's a little bit stouter blank, meant for baits up to 2.5 ounces, which is why I've got it on this rod specifically. The other one, again, is just the straight FP 936 by MHX. Both I had paired up with a Revo Rocket, a 10-to-1 gear ratio reel, super high speed, gets 41 inches of line retrieve on them, you know, per turn. So the idea with that is when you flip in, you can get those fish coming to you at a faster pace. You can pick up that line if they flip in there and they take off. You know, the name of the game with this type of fishing is get that fish to the surface, get them coming to the boat. You know, it seems like every weed in Florida is as tough as a branch is anywhere else in the country, whether it's a haygrass, a padstem, a cattail, a bulrush. I mean, you know, the pin grass, you name it, it just seems like it's super woody, and it's just really tough to get the fish out of that into the boat. So the faster you can get them up to the surface, the better. You know, all three of these were rigged up with Berkley X5 braid, 65-pound test, and yeah, I mean, it was pretty straightforward. You know, I had probably 8 or 9 rods on my deck. I had 4 or 5 moving baits that were ready to go in case I saw like a shad getting busted, but honestly, 2 of the days I never even unstrapped those rods. It was pretty much straight pitching for me. I caught 2 other fish on a Berkley General that I missed on one of these baits, and then followed it back up with the Berkley General. But these were by far, these caught probably 95% of the fish that I caught over the 3 days, and in fact probably the 5 days with practice included. So you know, that's it, guys. Florida's done. Well, Florida's done for the MLF Pro Circuit side. I am leaving in 2 weeks to go down to the Harris Chain for the first Bass Southern Open. And, you know, I've got all my rods piled up over here to start rigging up for that event. I'm not going to change a whole lot. A lot of the rods are going to be the exact same for that. So I'm looking forward to getting down there, fishing the Harris Chain. Then right after that, we go to Smith Lake. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. We're signing off. Like, subscribe, comment, stay tuned for more videos. We'll see you tomorrow.